Welcome to Wrestling with Heart, a podcast looking at pro wrestlers giving back to their community. Join me, Stanley Carr, as I interview wrestling's hottest names who use their platforms as entertainers to raise awareness and do community service. Hello and welcome to another edition of Wrestling with Heart. This is the show where we talk with professional wrestlers and professional wrestling personalities about their lives in and outside of the ring, as well as doing acts of charity work, community service, volunteering, and spreading positivity. We're all about the positivity here on the show. And with me right now, I've got a very special guest. He is a former WWE Intercontinental Champion and a former WCW World Television Champion. He is a motivational speaker, former Golden Gloves boxer. Pleased to welcome the one and only Marc Mero. Welcome, Marc, to Wrestling with Heart.
Thank you, Stanley. How you doing, man?
I am doing great. Thank you for coming on.
Man, been looking forward to this.
Yeah.
I love the positivity with it.
Thank you. I appreciate that. We try to maintain that level of optimism here on the program. Now, you're from New York, Buffalo, New York. Tell me about your upbringing in childhood.
I was born in Buffalo, New York, and I went to school there until high school, and then I went to Liverpool High School. We moved to Syracuse area, which the school I was in was Liverpool High School. Graduated from Liverpool High School, played hockey for the Syracuse Stars, and of course boxed for many years, and played football for Coach George O'Leary, who went on to win a national title with Georgia Tech. And then, of course, later on in life, at 31, I made it into the world of professional wrestling.
Amazing. So it seems like you were always into athletics from an early age. What was it about athletics that made you go, man, I want to do this?
Well, my first love was hockey. Growing up in Buffalo, we had the Buffalo Sabres, and they did pretty good early on. And I remember just watching their games on television, and then, of course, getting into hockey and starting out as a goalie and then moving to forward, to center, and then eventually moving to defense. So I played almost every position, and I excelled at it. Got all the way up to junior hockey, played junior hockey for the Syracuse Stars, and then got into boxing, and then that took off. So I was boxing, traveling with boxing, then eventually made the USA boxing team, where I moved to Colorado Springs, Colorado, at the U.S. Olympic Training Center. Was there for a while, and then I decided to turn professional in boxing. And 2 weeks before my first professional boxing match, I had my nose shattered in an accident and needed reconstructive surgery. And it was the first time in my life I had all this free time on my hands. I never had it because I was playing 2 or 3 sports every year. And in that free time, I started hanging out with the wrong people, making some really bad choices in life. And next thing you know, I get addicted to drugs, and 10 years of my life goes by. Oh man, it just really fell off the deep end, the only job I had was in construction. I was always a good athlete and stuff, strong kid. And I was working with pools, digging swimming pools. And, eventually found my way into professional wrestling. I had a bunch of friends over my apartment, and we were flipping to the TV channels. My buddy had the remote control, and he landed on professional wrestling. And I remember looking at it and getting that like aha moment. I go, hey guys, man, I could do that. Because I was always a good athlete, And they laughed. And, they're still my friends today. We talk about this. And, they said, Marc, look at the size of those guys. They'll pick you over their head and throw you at that ring. I said, no, I'm telling you, I could do that. And my other buddy goes, Marc, you're 30 years old. What do you do? Start a pro career at 30? And man, I just felt in my heart, I said those 2 words, I believe. And eventually now I got to find out where there was a wrestling school. And I found out I was living in Venice, Florida. There was one in Tampa, which was run by Boris Malenko, Dean Malenko and Joe Malenko's dad. Yeah. And he was a famous, the professional wrestler. And so I started driving the 1 hour drive to Tampa, and eventually learning how to at least somewhat wrestle. I was really green. And I met some guys at the workout gym that I was working out with, called the Waiting Room. And they were the guys that would get beat up on television and I said to him, I go, how do you get to do that? And he said, well, you got to drive to Atlanta, which is about like an 8 or 9 hour drive. And if they pick you for television, they pay you $150 and you get to wrestle one of the superstars. I thought, man, maybe that's a way of getting my foot in the door. Sure enough, I went up there and wrestled got a couple squash matches, and it was brutal, man. They don't treat the guys that do enhancements very well. And I was thinking to myself, man, I thought this stuff was fake, man. These guys are really kicking and punching me, you know? But anyways, lo and behold, Dusty Rhodes saw me and he said to me, "Hey kid, anybody ever tell you you look like Little Richard?" And I thought he was talking about a wrestler. So I said, "I never heard of Little Richard." He goes, "No, no, no, the singer, Little Richard, a womp bamba loo bop, womp bop boo." And I go, "Oh, yeah, I know who he is." He goes, "Yeah, look just like him." And next thing you know, he gives me this character, Johnny B. Bad, and it just takes off, man. And my whole life changed. And to this day, I still think about where my life would be if it wasn't for this incredible man, Dusty Rhodes, who was my mentor, like a father to me, and so many others that helped build careers in professional wrestling.
Yeah, I had Teddy Long on recently, and he was telling me about how he got paired up with you for that character. It was really incredible. And when you're in training mode to become a wrestler, like you had mentioned, it's just so brutal and it's just intense. The workouts that you guys are going through, the drills. I mean, that must have been hard.
You know, it was just like anything in life. If you really want it bad enough, you work hard. The school, obviously doing hundreds of Hindu squats and the taking bump after bump after bump. That's why so many guys don't last very long in professional wrestling. We see, NFL football players that come in, they're toughest guys that last a day, and then they're saying, "I ain't doing this, man." It really does take a toll on you. Right now, remember all the sports I played football, hockey, boxing, I played lacrosse. And I think about they're all such contact sports. I have never done anything in my life as physically demanding as professional wrestling. And that's coming from a guy that played top sports and all these different other activities.
Yeah, I mean, it's like at the tippy top as far as like, combat sports and physicality. I mean, you were used to that though with the hockey and with the boxing. Was there anything that at least, especially from your boxing days that you were able to parlay into wrestling because there's a lot of similarities.
Well, the boxing, the thing that was hard about going from boxing to wrestling was throwing a working punch. Boxing, you use your shoulders and you use your momentum and stuff. And with wrestling, you get the big wind up, and you would never see that obviously in boxing. So that was a little difficult to navigate that. I definitely potatoed a few guys in my day when I first started, but never on purpose. It was just one of those things where you learn as you go. But I was really blessed that Dusty put with some of the top guys in the business to teach me along the road. Because when I got into professional wrestling with WCW, I signed my contract. I only had a few amateur bouts under me. I
Mhm.
only had a few wrestling matches under me for Suncoast Pro Wrestling and a couple other local places in Claremont. But I really didn't get to wrestle a lot. So getting on the road, next thing you know, I'm in front of all these people, and I'm wrestling like they put me with Ricky Morton to begin with, or Raven, it was Scotty Flamingo
Mhm.
back then.
Yep.
Um, oh gosh, Tracy Smothers, the guys that were really great workers that taught me along the way, and then of course moved me up to guys like Arn Anderson and Triple H and or John Paul Levesque or whatever it was
Mhm.
back then. Um, and so it was a really great learning experience. I was blessed to be in there with some of the best ever.
Yeah, I mean, you worked in WCW, you had this great gimmick, Johnny B. Bad, former world television champion. I mean, what tell me about some of your favorite opponents to wrestle during this period of time.
There's a few guys that it's hard to pick just one because they're all so different in different ways, But I remember a match that that stands out is with Flying Brian at Fall Brawl. We went 30 minutes, and it was a classic match. We really put on a great show, and it was one of the I think it was the top match on the card for the pay-per-view. But I had some real good ones with DDP, who's one of my close friends. He lives 20 minutes down the road from me here, so we still challenge each other in craziness.
Mhm.
Arn Anderson was another, just you can't have a bad match with Arn Anderson.
No.
Oh gosh, I got to wrestle Ric Flair. Was like a day off. Everybody knows Ric Flair matches, so it was kind of an easy match. Um, Guys, there's so many guys that I think of Stone Cold Steve Austin. We was Stunning Steve in WCW. I got to wrestle him so many times because we wrestled many programs in WCW. And then I went on to WWE and wrestled, King of the Ring, and we did so many other things there. So I was blessed to learn from some of the best.
Was there any pieces of advice that you got during this period that stuck with you throughout your career? Like any pieces of advice that you took?
Yes, there's something I want to share with anyone that is getting into the business is that we try to do so many moves, and there's not always a lot of rhyme or reason why we do these moves. And the one thing that I used to always watch is I remember Steve Austin used to always like peek through the curtain and watch almost every match. I was thinking, man, he watches every single match, but not realizing he's absorbing what everyone else can do. So when he wrestles you, he knows what you're good at and what he wants to stay away from. And there's psychology behind the wrestling. Like right now, I like when I turn on TV, I see some guys just trying so many high flying moves that don't make sense. They don't mean as much when you see the finish because they've already done triples and doubles off the top rope and these crazy back handsprings and all this stuff that really don't make sense in a match. Where when you look at some of the old matches that you got the crowd behind you, it builds up to those high flying matches. And that's what me and Brian did in our 30-minute match. We tried to build up to where we were doing all the crazy moves at the end where they meant something because they thought we were going to pin each other with those moves.
Yeah, definitely less is more. You don't always need to
Yeah.
be doing the acrobatic stuff. Do some more ground mat work. It's good to have some variety in there.
I remember Arn Anderson told me that. He goes, Mark, you got to slow down, man. He goes, and when you think you're going slow, slow down even more. And I always remember that because the crowd is going to get behind you. We'd be so anxious if the crowd was quiet. They got to do something, got to do something. He'd hold me in the hold. He goes, just relax, let him come, let him come. And
Mhm.
sooner or later, they would start going, Johnny, Johnny, and we'd build up for the next move or whatever we were doing.
Yeah. Always is good to listen and work with your partner because they're going to help you get through that match.
Yeah.
Now you get to WWE. Now I believe this is 96.
96, yeah.
What made you decide to leave WCW to go to WWE?
I always looked at WWE as sort of called the WrestleMania was the dance. I mean, if you got to WrestleMania, you made it in professional wrestling. It was so big. And I always felt I was going to finish my career at WWE. And when I got the opportunity, and I was the first one to get a guaranteed contract, because that's the only way I would go. Vince asked me, "What's it going to take to get you to come here?" I said, "Vince, I got to have a guaranteed contract." And then when he said yes to that, I told him I wanted a signing bonus and I wanted my wife to travel everywhere I go because I've seen so many guys getting divorced because we're on the road so much. So I figured if I had my wife on the road with me, at least we'd be able to stay strong together. And then I said to Vince, I go, "Hey, she's really pretty. Why don't you have her as my valet?" And he was like, "No, let's just worry about you." But when he flew me up to Stamford to sign my contract, she came with me. And then as soon as he saw her, he goes, "Man, I got to put her on television." And that's how Sable was born.
The Sable phenomenon definitely helped kick off the Attitude Era as we
Yeah.
know it today. But tell me some of the positive highlights from your time in WWE that you still look back on fondly.
Well, obviously winning the Intercontinental title because I did that in a tournament. And I think about who I had to beat in that tournament that they put me over. Owen Hart, Stone Cold Steve Austin, Ron Simmons, some of the great names. I mean, all pretty much Hall of Famers. You know what I mean? It's just amazing that I got to wrestle these guys and be put over them to win the Intercontinental title. So that was a real highlight. Even in a losing effort, Stone Cold, when I wrestled him in the King of the Ring, we had a great match for him the day he said Austin 316, being a part of so many historical things, being there at the Montreal screw job, being there even in WCW when Cactus Jack lost his ear, I was sitting
Mm.
next to him. There's so many opportunities when, gosh, the tragedy that happened between Arn and Sid. I was on that tour, staying in that hotel. So there were so many things that I've been a part of that were historical in professional wrestling, and being there when the Attitude Era happened. I mean, it's going to be one things that I've always talked about in wrestling.
Definitely one of the hottest periods of professional wrestling. Plenty of people still recall those moments where you and Sable were together, and of course later on when you and Jacqueline were together, teaming up to take on Sable and Edge at SummerSlam. That was a really good match.
Yeah, it's we drew so much heat when I turned on Sable, and it was a great storyline. I got to give Vince Russo a lot of credit for that. We used to have a lot of fun going over what we were going to do and how we would take it to the next level. Whether she comes out in a potato sack or a reindeer outfit, or she'd always up me, in everything she did, and obviously being part of a storyline, we had so much fun doing that.
Definitely one of the real highlights of that period of time for sure was the Marc Mero Sable storylines. Uh, you mentioned DDP earlier. Who else do you keep in contact with today in professional wrestling business?
It's funny because when I go to a wrestling convention, even though I may not have seen someone in a long time, or even we weren't even maybe very good friends back then, man, it's so different now. Like it's all like if there was animosity or whatever, everything's water under the bridge. It's like we've done something that many people will never get to do. And so you see an old friend or someone you wrestled or worked with, it's always like a hug or, just a good gestures, and it's sincere. So I have no animosity or bitterness towards anyone in the business. So it's always great to see people. But I mean, there's a few guys that live close by me, which is really cool. Eric Watts doesn't live too far away. Buff Bagwell doesn't live too far away. Of course, DDP still go with him and do his DDPY. And let's see. Oh man, there's a few other guys that live not too far away, but it's mostly the wrestling conventions. I was over in the one in the UK, and I had a great time there seeing everybody, and man, just running into friends that I haven't seen in years, or seeing people that I never met before that were in the industry. That it's been really cool.
Yeah, it's really like a reunion whenever you get to see
Yeah.
your old friends come back together, reminisce on old memories, times from back in the day, and so it's really nice that you're able to experience that all these years later. Let's switch gears now and talk about the charity work and things that you've done outside of wrestling. You are just an incredible motivational speaker. I've got to watch several of your videos on Instagram, spreading that positivity as we do here on the podcast. Let's talk about your charity, Champions of Choice. What made you decide to get started with this?
Well, gosh, it's really strange, and it was never something I set out to do. What happened was, I started my own fitness club, personal training studio, and I got a call from Melbourne High School football coach, and he just wanted me to come and speak to the football players, like 40, 50 of them, can't remember. And just about, not doing drugs and, staying, working hard in their sport and blah, blah, blah. So I went and did that. And it was funny because I got a lot of emails back from the football players saying, man, that really changed my life. It really inspired me. I thought, oh, that's so cool. But unbeknownst to me, they called another school and said, hey, we had Marc Mero come and speak to our athletes. And that school said, well, let them come speak to the whole school. And that's how it started, man. And then it just snowballed. One school called another. The only advertisement I do is, hey, schedule me for next year or whatever, coming up or whatever. And now this is my 18th year presenting at schools, coming up in September, my 18th year. It's just amazing.
18 years.
Yeah, thousands of schools and hundreds of thousands of students all over the world. I mean, I've been to Russia, Guatemala, Puerto Rico, uh, all over the United States and Canada. Been to almost every state now, um, except Alaska. Now, if you're out there from Alaska, come on, get me out there.
Yeah, book them now. I mean,
Look
come
up,
on,
yes.
you're missing out if you're not.
Yeah, we're real busy in September, October, so we do have some openings, so don't miss it.
Yes. So what are some things that you talk about when you're talking to students?
Well, Stanley, a lot of kids are dealing with, and it's not just kids, it's adults. It's the world we live in today, with a lot of people dealing with depression, anxiety, being bullied or abused, self-harming, suicidal thoughts. These are all relevant issues I speak about at schools. And some of it are my own personal things I went through where I was in such depression and wanted to end it all. And I just thank God every day I didn't make that decision because I tell people that you never know how fast things can change. And I never would have known all the beautiful things that would come in my life if I would have made that horrible decision back then. New friendships, new love, new happiness, new peace, and a purpose in my life that you have no idea how fast things can change. It's almost like God assigns people in your life that show up just when you need them. So please, if you're out there and going through a hard time, just don't give up, man. I promise you, after every storm, the sun will eventually shine.
Yes. Do you care to share or care to elaborate more about the struggles that you went through?
Well, losing my mother and my brother 2 weeks apart. My mom was only 58, my brother was only 21. It really had a profound effect on me. And then a few years later, of course, going through the divorce with Sable was really heartbreaking. And then losing my dad, my best friend. It was just one thing after another. It's like the perfect storm of, and then getting divorced and going through a financial just bad choices and still living like I'm making a lot of money, but I wasn't. And it was like everything that could go wrong was going wrong in my life. And I just felt, man, all alone that I had to sell my beautiful home and um, I didn't know what I was going to do next. And it just got to the point where I'll never forget it. It was Christmas Day and I drove to Cocoa Beach, Florida, and I sat under a pier on Christmas Day. I mean, the day we celebrate with friends and family and the
Your
Christmas
loved
tree
ones.
and the music and the food and fellowship and the birth of our Savior, and I sat under a pier and watched the waves roll in, roll out. And that's when I contemplated the end. And I tell you, if it wasn't for me getting on my knees and asking God in my life, I don't know what would have happened. But man, everything changed. And it doesn't change instantly, And the other thing I want to share is that I've been 21 years clean now because that was the day. I've never touched a drug since then, And the drug of my choice was cocaine back then. I was just an addict. And man, just being clean from that and free from that, it just gives your life so much meaning because now you can help people because people say, I don't know how I can get off this or that or pain medication or whatever it is, and it's just wanting to change your life and realizing that whether it's a 10-step program or AA or counseling or whatever it's going to take, everybody's a little different, and there's no one thing that fits all, and mine was my faith in God, my that just changed everything for me. And so whatever it is, find out what it is that's going to help your life because we're all different. We all look at things differently. We may not have the same faith. You may be able to go to an AA meeting and listen to someone speak there and go, wow, I want to have what they have, or I want to change the way this person changed. So the main thing is it's just don't quit, man. Just don't quit.
No, I mean, life is about struggle and it can be stressful at times. And all you have to do is just keep pushing forward, find something that's meaningful to you to keep yourself going. And with this wonderful cause, I mean, it seems like it's definitely helped you get past all the negativity.
It's through our struggles we find our strength. And I look at the stage as my as like um almost like my therapy every day, that I can get up there and share from my heart something I went through that's going to help someone in the audience that's listening to me right now. I can't tell you how many kids I get messages from that gave up vaping, even, that they realize that is when that first comes out, it's like it's safe, it's okay. Now we're seeing kids getting cancer from vaping. We're seeing the mixtures that are going to this. I mean, you can't have 50 chemicals that taste like strawberry or watermelon and be safe. It just
No.
doesn't happen. And now we're seeing the detrimental effects of how it's destroying kids' lungs from vaping. And so we're seeing more and more kids getting off even vaping from my presentations.
It's horrifying to hear about the dangers of drugs, alcohol, smoking, and just everything. Vaping, you just mentioned that. I mean, we need people to like what you're doing right now to tell these young people because they're our future. They are the ones that are going to take over in society that this stuff is not okay.
Yeah, one of the things I recognize, Stanley, is that I go to all these schools and they have wonderful counselors because I often meet with counselors before my presentation to discuss, because a lot of kids are going to want to see them after the presentation. And they have some wonderful counselors, but schools don't have medical health specialists. And they may have one for a whole county or something, where a kid might have to wait 4 to 5 months to meet with a health advisor, someone that could help with mental health issues. And I think every school should have mental health provide provision for kids that can go and see someone that they're dealing with this anxiety or depression, because the counselor is not always able to understand some of the things, like especially some of the drugs that kids are on today, whether it's Adderall or something that they never heard of or knew of before this.
Yeah, they need to have resources so that we can able to curb the problem. May not stop at 100%, but we can at least try to flatten it so that we don't have reduces a lot of the stuff that's going on right now. Well, what is it about giving back to you, Mark, that gives you the most joy?
Man, there's no greater gift than giving. The more you give, the more you get back in your own life. And that's what people don't understand. It's like when you can make someone happy, you find yourself being happy. When you give something to somebody, you found yourself just this joy that overwhelms me. And I actually wrote about it on my social media today, because there's no greater joy than helping another person in life. And I never understood that until I started doing it. There's just a Honestly, the more I can only say, the more you give, the more you get back in your own life. And I've just seen the effect it's had on so many people by just sharing my story, by helping a person, by paying it forward, by financially helping somebody, whatever it would be that I have done to help others is only blessed my own life.
Yeah, I mean, it only takes a village, right?
Even while you're living, so you're knowing where it's going.
That's right. Well, before we go, you had mentioned to me off air that you've got a new book coming out. It's really exciting.
Yes, man. We're I believe we're about 100,000 words in right now. It's different stories from it's called From Bad, BADD, to Good. And it's the Marc Mero story. It's me growing up and of course getting into sports and then making it into professional wrestling, then stories from professional wrestling. And I'm very honest in stuff I've shared that I never shared before, of some of the detrimental things I've done in my life, that I share where my good choices took me. And I'm very honest where those bad choices took me. But in the end, the paths we take in life lead us to where we are today. And hopefully they're in a really good place. And I want people to get the book. I think they're being really inspired by it. I put a lot of effort into it. I have a writer his name is Ben Veal. He's in England, and we met. And I love the way this guy could share a story. So when I shared my stories with him, the way he would write it was like the way I would say it on stage almost. So we really had a great chemistry together. And I think the book is going to really help a lot of people. And that's the reason I wrote it.
Yeah, it should inspire someone and people out there that are listening to it. Marc Mero's book should be on bookshelves everywhere. I really do think that you've got an incredible story, and I'm looking forward to reading it and checking it out. Hey, Mark, I just want to say thank you again for coming on to Wrestling with Heart. It means a lot to me and to my listeners and to the viewers that are watching this on YouTube. Where can people find more about you on social media if they want to get in touch with you or get in touch with your program? Where can people find more about you?
Obviously I'm on YouTube, the Marc Mero on YouTube, at Marc Mero on Twitter or X now, and let's see, Instagram, Facebook. Just type in my name, you'll find me. It's real easy. Marc is MarcMero, and you find me everywhere. And I'd love you to follow me and listen to my inspiration every day.
Yes, and I will be sure to tune in, continue to listen into your watch your videos because they're very, very helpful, especially if somebody's going through a hard time in their life. Well, Mark, thanks again, and you're more than welcome to come back.
Thank you, Stanley. It was great talking to you.
Great talking to you too. All right, take care. This is Wrestling with Heart. I hope you found this podcast to be informative and entertaining. If you did, please hit the subscribe button and look out for the next edition.